Now let's go through the solutions of the homework that I set for you on Friday. So this was working with the last few laws, 6, 7, 8 and 9 in particular, and combining them in some cases as well. So there are some tricky questions here to do without your calculator. I'm going to go through all parts of it. Sorry, I got a strange alert there. I'm going to go through all parts of it, and you guys can feel free to fast forward if there was stuff that was easy. So just to go over the parts that caused any problems. So we're going to evaluate each of the following without a calculator, and 16 to the power of a quarter means the fourth root of 16, which is 2, because, now I won't do this for every single one, 2 to the power of 4 is 16. It's worth, so I mentioned learning off our first few cubes and our first 10 to 15 squares. It's worth learning off some of the powers of 2 as well. So anything to the power of 0 is 1, of course. Then 2 to the power of 1 is 2, sorry. 2 squared is 4. 2 to the power of 3 is 8. You can see that we're just doubling it every time. 32, 2 to the power of 6, 64, 2 to the power of 7, 128, 2 to the power of 8, 512, 2 to the power of 9, 1024. Oh, sorry, I skipped one. 2 to the power of 8 is 256, 2 to the power of 9 is 512, and 2 to the power of 10 is 1024. They get big quite quickly. How many of those should you know of? The first 5 anyway. So it's worth learning the first 5 powers of 2. You'd certainly be expected to know as far as 2 to the power of 4, to know that without using a calculator. If you were asked to give a reason why this is true, it's because 2 to the power of 4 is 16. Now, I'll move a little bit more quickly through the rest of them. Part B, 27 to the power of 2/3. So that means the cube root of 27 and then square your answer. And the cube root of 27 is 3, so 3 squared is 9. Part C, 64 to the power of 2/3. So we're looking for the cube root of 64. That's one of the cubes we wanted to learn off, and then square our answer. So the cube root of 64 is 4, and 4 squared is 16. Part D, 16 to the power of 3/4. It's the fourth root of 16, which we've already said is 2, and then we cube our answer. So that's 8. Part E, 100 to the power of 3/2. That's the square root of 100, and then cube your answer. So that's 10 cubed, which is 1000. So you see how we're working them out. We get the root first. It's usually better to get the root first and then apply the power. And then 125 to the power of 2/3. And that's the cube root of 125, which we know is 5. That's 5 squared, which is 25. So that was question 6. And if you were asked to do a question like this without your calculator, of course you can check the answer with your calculator, but they would want to see this step to show that you're applying the rule. Okay, moving on to question 7. We have some negative fraction powers. So for part A, it's 100 to the power of minus a half. So we do the minus first. Actually, it doesn't matter which one you do first. You'll get the same answer either way, which means that's 1 over 100 to the power of a half, which is 1 over the square root of 100, and that is 1/10. So you can see how we're doing the calculations there. What they'll need to see is that you can apply the 2 rules here, the minus rule and the fraction power rule. Okay, so for part B, we have 36 to the power of minus a half. So it's okay to do both of them in one step. Minus brings it under the line, and the half makes it a square root, and that's 1/6. Part C, 16 to the power of minus a quarter. So that's 1 over the fourth root of 16, or 1 over a half, 1/2. Part D, 9 to the power of minus 3 over 2. So this is going to be 1 over, because of the minus, square root of 9, and then we cube our answer. So that's 1 over 3 cubed, which is 1 over 27. Part E, we have 8 to the power of minus 2/3. So the minus makes it 1 over. 8 to the power of 2/3, the cube root of 8, and then square it. So that is going to be 1 over 2 squared, which is 1/4, 1 over 4. Okay, a lot of work in those, even though it looks really straightforward. And of course you can check your answer, but you're not going to get marks for going straight to the answer. They want to see you applying the rule. We'll move on to question 8. You can let me know if you've got questions about 6 or 7 in the comments. So now we're using our multiplication law. So verify that each of the following is true. They're saying, is 20 to the power of 4 equal to 5 to the power of 4 by 4 to the power of 4? Well, it is, because 20 is 5 by 4. And when we raise two things to the power of 4, like this, that will be 5 to the power of 4 by 4 to the power of 4. It's nearly trivially true. This wasn't something you needed to do in your calculator. They just wanted you to show that this is 5 by 4. That's what they were looking for. It'd be a bit of a confusing question. So this was A, part 1. Part 2, 15 to the power of 6 is 3 by 5 to the power of 6, which is 3 to the power of 6 by 5 to the power of 6. So that's how we can write our answer. Part 3, 36 to the power of a half is 9 by 4 to the power of a half, which is 9 to the power of a half by 4 to the power of a half. There was nothing more we needed to write there. And part 4, part 4 then, 216 to the power of a third is 8 by 27. I'm just using the numbers that they actually wrote down. 8 by 27 is 216 to the power of a third, so that's 8 to the power of a third by 27 to the power of a third. And we didn't need to go any further. You can if you want to, like for example, we know that this is going to be 3 by 2, square root of 9 by the square root of 4, which is 6, and that's the square root of 36. But this wasn't asked for. This was not needed as part of your homework. So for question 8, they just wanted you to apply the rule and show how it applies. Part B of question 8 then. Question 8, part B, asked us to do the division law. And I think the first one is wrong. Okay, so 3/4, oh, it is the same, yeah. 3/4 to the power of 8 can be written as 6 over 8, because 6 over 8 simplifies to 3/4. They're equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions. So that's 6 over 8 all to the power of 8, which is 6 to the power of 8 over 8 to the power of 8. Part 2, 9 over 16 to the power of a half. Well, 9 over 16 can be written as 18 over 32, because again, they're equivalent fractions. So that's 18 to the power of a half over 32 to the power of a half. Sorry, that was part 3, just the way it's filled out in the book. Part 2 then, 3/5 to the power of 9 is the same as 9 over 15, equivalent fractions to the power of 9. So that is 9 over 9, 9 to the power of 9 over 15 to the power of 9. That's the verification, that's all we needed to do. And part 4, 25 over 64 to the power of minus a half. 125 over 64 can be written as 75 over 192, and that minus a half power comes in on both of them. And you didn't have to do anything more than that. That's all we needed to do. If you checked them on your calculator and saw that you got the same number, that would probably count for your verification. But what they were looking for in this question was the application of the rule. Okay, don't worry too much about question 8. It's just an odd question to sort of force you to apply the rule. It's not the type of question that comes up in exams. So if you don't really get what it's asking, it's just trying to get you to see that when you've got equivalent fractions, even with powers on them, they stay as equivalent fractions. Now, question 9 was a more useful question because we're evaluating these powers without using a calculator. So a quarter to the power of a half means the square root of a quarter, which is the square root of 1 over the square root of 4, which is a half. Part B, 1 over 25 to the power of a half means the square root, and now I'm just going to skip this middle step here, the square root of 1 over the square root of 25, because the power of a half applies to the numerator and the denominator, and that's just a fifth. 4 over 9 to the power of a half, it's the square root of 4 over the square root of 9, 2/3. So again, that square root, that power of a half, applies both to the numerator and to the denominator. Part D, 81 over 25 to the power of a half, that's the square root of 81 over the square root of 25. These are all the perfect squares that hopefully you've learned off now. That's 9 over 5. 8 over 27 to the power of a third. Now we're cube rooting. So the cube root of 8 over the cube root of 27, which is 2/3. Part F, 8 over 125, and again we're cube rooting. So these are some of the cubes that I asked you to learn off. 125, cube root of 8 is 2, cube root of 125 is 5. So you should know those without using a calculator. But of course, nothing's stopping you doing this step and then typing in the other part into the calculator. It's just quicker to not need to, and you recognize things a little bit more quickly. 16 over 81 to the power of 3/4. That's the cube root of 16 over the fourth. Sorry, that's my bad there. That is the fourth root, it's the bottom number, keep making the same mistake, the fourth root of 16 over the fourth root of 81, and then I'm going to cube my answer. Okay, fourth root of 16. I haven't told you to learn off the fourth roots. You might know this one, but if you don't, you can use your calculator. The fourth root of 16 is 2. The fourth root of 81 is 3. So if you don't know those, you could use the calculator at this step and type in, it's here above, the square root sign is the cube root, and right next to it, 2 buttons over, we've got the something root. So if I do 4, shift this button here, so I can make the fourth root of 16, and that's 2. Let's do that again. Shift this button here, 4, and then come over with my arrow to fill in 81. So the fourth root of 81 is 3. So if you don't know it, you can use the calculator at this step to go here. Then 2 cubed is 8 and 3 cubed is 27. So that was the 9th law that we learned, that the power there applies to both parts of the fraction. Okay, very last part now. H. 27 over 64 to the power of 2/3. So this is going to be, the bottom number is my root, the cube root of 27 over the cube root of 64, and then I will square my answer. Cube root of 27 we should know is 3, the cube root of 64 is 4, And then I square my answer, and the square applies to both parts, so that is 9/16. So those were all the answers to question 9. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions on that. We'll do a little bit more practice with these before we move on to more difficult examples, and we're nearly done with indices then. Thank you.